Hi there, Sophie Howard here. I have just watched a fantastic training session on Masterclass with Jocko Willink, and this was a new course that I saw came out, and I jumped on it because I've actually read Jocko's book and I've also listened to a few of his podcast episodes. And this is one disciplined, gritty guy. This guy has just got a phenomenal work ethic and transitioned out of his military life as a former Navy SEAL into a corporate consulting type role. So when I saw that Masterclass had a critical leadership training class, I thought I would check it out, and I wondered whether it would be worth it and who it would appeal to. And now I've just finished it. While it's fresh in my mind, I thought I would just share my thoughts on who it's going to be useful for and is it a really good quality training that you might want to watch. So here I go. So firstly, he's a great presenter. He's a total seasoned pro, really holds the room, loads of energy in his delivery, and as with all masterclass courses, he's really broken it down into nice actionable steps. So it's not a theory of leadership, it's not just in the military. In fact, it's kind of a very non-military style of leadership, really, from what you'd expect. And the other thing that I really liked about it was whether you've got a big corporate business and you're working your way through up as a manager, or if you're more like me with your own business in a small, more entrepreneurial environment, read Chaos, do these principles work in all these different settings? And whether you're in military mode, corporate career, or entrepreneurial chaos, or a small business of any sort, actually, as an employer, would this help you become a better leader? And I'd say emphatically, yes, it definitely would. But not only would it help you understand what makes a good leader, there's some really good laws with some really nice examples that would help you really think about your own management or leadership styles, some self-awareness, and really thinking about growing leaders around you. So one of the biggest takeaways for me, just because I've just finished it, the biggest thing I'm thinking about now is that it isn't about making me a better leader, it's about ensuring all the rest of my team become leaders in their own right. So that sort of decentralized, less sort of command from top down, but much more everybody thinking for themselves, everybody caring about the same outcome, able to communicate clearly. So although some of it sounds like just standard basics, communicate your shared goals, or give feedback and interact well with your team, there is a lot more of the softer side in this course than you might expect. So firstly, Jocko introduces himself and some of his background, just in case you're in any doubt, although in the first 30 seconds you'll realise that this guy is quite the man. And he's got some great examples and lovely stories that he shares from his time both in the military and with clients in his more corporate life ever since. But he really talks about those simple things, but just also how to do them. So like, if you have to work with your team through a really busy period and really expecting a lot of them, big hours, big stress, big deliverables, whatever it might be, how the principle of cover and hold would, help somebody push through the high pressure bits to then know that later on that you've got that release and that there's going to be sort of an offset for the high pressure. So he's not all about barking military orders and bullying people into sort of high performance, but this cover and move would be, an example of, you've got to push on to hit a big deadline in a month, but then we're going to celebrate as a team or have some shorter days or have some downtime, quiet time and recover. So he really doesn't want you to push your team for permanent high performance or for you to push yourself as a leader in permanent high performance mode. He really wants you to understand the need to ease off and share that load amongst the team. So I'll just run through these modules, the different classes within the course. So the human interaction, there's some really good audience he's got, some sort of sample business leaders who he's got. One's a chef with a catering company, a real mix of people, one who's a manager, and they talk about their real life examples, which I think if you're in business or an employee looking to become a better leader, there'll be a couple of these characters that you can really relate to and see how they are taking on board Jocko's situations and training and the principles he's teaching. So very, very actionable insights and really clear case studies of, if you're in this situation, this would be how a good leader would handle it. This would be a less good way to handle that situation. So a lot of the communication skills about building rapport and even exact ways how to establish trust. You do something together and show me trust, I show you trust back. how to be a good listener, and how to earn respect. And in the military world, obviously, there's badges and stars and stripes and credentials and medals that give you seniority. But actually, even with that background, Jocko talks a lot about the way that you earn respect, which is not by throwing your weight around, but actually, by working together and showing that you listen and showing that you help each other out to both get ahead, and really understanding that chain of command above you as well as below you to move on up. So one particularly useful session is all about being a new manager, and especially, and this is really relatable, I've been in this situation, if you're in a team and then you're promoted within that team and then you become your former peers manager, awkward. So there's some really good tips in there on how to work with your team when there might be some resentment or jealousy or just that lack of respect on day one. So some really practical stuff in there. And you sort of kind of role models and role plays all those typical conversations, typical scenarios, and a nice little flow of how you might address those challenges as a leader. So in building an effective team, there's a nice little workshop run through there. And the challenges of managing that kind of accountability when he's been in the military field and there's been, deadly situations, which he actually is very open about, a friendly fire incident. So just that ability to front up when there has been a mistake. And his book is actually called Extreme Ownership, this one here, Module 5. So I think part of that humility he shows, he's not this perfect machine who knows everything, who can make every decision perfectly. He actually talks about how all his decisions, he just makes a series of small decisions very fast. And that gives the impression of being very decisive, but actually he's getting feedback from every little decision and making them quickly and listening to the feedback and observing how that decision's playing out in the field or in the business, and then making the next decision and the next decision. So he's really tuned in. You can just tell he's really connected to the people he's talking to. You feel like you're connected to him as he's talking to you on screen. And you can imagine if you were, following him, whether it's in business or in a military setting, he's somebody who's just super aware of his surrounds and the bigger picture strategy, super aware of the strengths of his team, but also has enough trust with his team to hand over control of decision making to different individuals, so it's not all on his shoulders. And I think for us as leaders, that lesson about decentralizing the command is the biggest takeaway, but there's some really good examples about that. So he's got some set laws, the leadership laws, 4 of those. So if I quickly just give you a little recap of those so that you know what's ahead. The cover and move is really about taking pressure off different members of the team or taking pressure off the whole team at a time. You just can't push the whole time. Keeping it simple, that could be even in just the way instructions are communicated or breaking down a bigger challenge into little steps. And he does a little exercise. There's something that you could do with your team, just replicate this exact same drill or this exercise he does, which sort of throws confusion into your team, lets them sort it out. And then it's a great teaching sort of case study of why you want to keep things simple. And then prioritize and execute. So he's got his methods there for just calming things down, the body language, the breathing, even like physically stepping back, the holding your head up, your hands down, just getting out of that fight or flight mode when you've got to use your brain and actually process the situation and make a better intellectual decision despite your body being in panic mode. And it's really, really practical stuff. I can imagine myself, on a difficult phone call, getting more and more stressed, or sitting in a meeting feeling really exasperated and then, at risk of saying something silly, or just career limiting moves just by, not being able to prioritize where you put your effort, how you actually execute and solving these problems. And then, as I mentioned a couple of times, this helping your team become leaders themselves. So everybody steps up as you step up. So that was the biggest one. So that last leadership law 4, decentralized command. If you're a manager and can implement this, it's going to make a huge difference to your whole team's productivity, but also their happiness and job satisfaction and general well-being, and just the stress levels, the flow of the work. You can just see how that freedom gives everybody integrity, more accountability and more output, and just more productive people. So there's sort of a nice little wrap up at the end, and I feel like I've sort of summarized the course rather than told you whether I think it's worth it or not. I totally think it's worth it. He's a great presenter. I've never seen him in video format. I've read his book and listened to podcasts. So he's got a very sort of gravelly voice. The one thing I didn't love was the slightly sort of heavy music between the little intros and outros. Not quite to my taste, but it sort of suits him and his personal brand. But although that was sort of quite noisy in Boise, it wasn't a training session that would only be relevant for military people or men. It was definitely, any workplace setting, any business setting, any family or any even personal leadership situation you've got where you want to step up, think about how best to develop your leadership skills, how to, raise your children to be leaders. Even at that level, there was some really great lessons. So it has my full endorsement. I think it was a great course. It was quite short, but very powerful demonstrations. And you could actually just take some of these exercises or questions that he runs through with the little sample of business people he's got in his little clutch there when he does the teaching demos. And you could just implement those right away. So a great session on leadership training, but it wasn't your classic command and control. It was very non-military, which I was really pleased about because it wouldn't be my style to be command and control, or shouting or, full sort of authority in military mode. It was definitely a very modern workplace setting, coaching people through any challenges they have and solving problems very pragmatically and quickly, but not trying to do everything at once. So brilliant. Jocko nailed it. Really, really good course. And anybody in any leadership role or aspiring to be a leader, whether in the workplace or, in personal life, professional personal life, I think this would be a great leadership training for you. So I hope you check it out and enjoy it, and keep watching these videos. I'm working my way through a bunch of the masterclass longer courses, so I'm really enjoying having the time to stop, digest, think about them. And then when I do these videos, I sort of summarize back to you some of the highlights, but I only recommend the ones that I really, really believe have got valuable learnings in them for you. So I hope you stay tuned, and I've got more coming up shortly. So hope you continue your never-ending learning journey. It's just such a great way to keep moving ahead, feel good about yourself, and just constantly be upskilling to deal with all the challenges and opportunities that are out there in life. So go and check out Jocko Willink on Masterclass, and I think you'll find it's a great training.